Welcome back, DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, to another episode of our seasoning. How long we got to go? What's the day counter on?
Well, it's on 39 on my thing, and I haven't changed it since last week. So, as 32. We record, it'll be 32. But once this drops, 31, and then by the 8th, it's going to be a month to go. So,
yeah, pretty much a month.
Getting there.
Slowly. I mean, hopefully, this could be the last off-season episode. You don't know. Could be.
Oh, we never know.
We still need Dale Coyne to announce. This week, we're still waiting. So, you've got 32 days, Dale, to make your mind up. Well, Dreyer Reinbold made their mind up before Dale Coyne did, which says quite a lot. So, we'll get onto that in a minute. But we are almost there. 32 days to go until free practice in the streets of St. Petersburg. Let's get on with the Dreyer Reinbold news today. As expected, they're going to be back at the Indy 500. They're going to line up with Conor, Daly and Hunter-Reay this year. So Hunter-Reay obviously sticks around like he did last year, and then Daly comes in as we sort of expected. And we predicted in about July or something that he's going to be in the other car.
Yeah, let's kick it off with Daly. We may as well go one by one. He was actually with Dreyer and Reinbold last weekend, so the weekend after the announcement, doing Nitro Cross again in Calgary in Canada. I think it was on ice actually, so that's something different. I'm not sure how it went. I think I saw a tweet from them that it might not have gone too well for the team, but more experience for Daly and something vastly different. But yeah, I don't think it was ever really in doubt that he would be back for the 500 again. Obviously an Indiana native. He's led, I think, a combined 47 laps across 2021, 2022 in the 500. So he's clearly adept. I think he finished 7th, 8th last year, I think.
Right.
So he's someone you really want on your books. And I think, lining up alongside 2014 Indy 500 winner in Hunter-Reay, it's a very strong lineup for Dreyer and Reinbold. It's unfortunate to see Stefan Wilson not with them. I don't know whether I don't think it's been explicitly said whether he isn't ready to race again, because I think there was a report from Racer a few months back that he is now fully recovered. But yeah, not sure exactly what's gone on there. But yeah, I think just focusing on Daly first, it's good to see him get a drive that is supposedly, as the drivers both believe, and to be fair, Dreyer and Reinbold have shown over the years can be pretty competitive.
Nice to see Conor Daly back. He's one of the loved ones of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Those couple of years where he led a couple of laps. I think he led the most laps in 21, 22, won them. I think it's 21. He led the most laps of anyone. So it's great to see him back out there. And he's one of those where he really needs a space in the grid. Not only is he an Indiana native, he is a reliable pair of hands. And for a team like Dreyer Reinbold, who they've got an intention to win. They're not there to fill up the numbers. They want to win this race, and he's definitely a guy who's going to take them forward. He's got, I don't know how many Indy 500s now. He's probably a 12, 13 now. Let me have a look. This would be his 11th Indy 500 for Conor Daly. So he's a man of a vast amount of experience. He's, as we said, led quite a lot of laps at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in recent years, and as I sort of said, just a reliable pair of hands, and he's obviously got those links to the team already, which is really going to help him. And best of luck to him. He's a podcast favourite, Conor Daly, and it's good to see him back where he belongs.
I think it's nice as well after kind of what happened last season to, halfway through not having a seat, then at the end he was like just getting whatever seat he could, and for this year to once again just have a full-time seat, I think is really good for him. And I think I don't want to say I'd like to see what he'd do because we already know what he does, but I would like to see kind of how he settles in with the team, I guess, and make sure that last year didn't really affect him in any way, because not that it would, but yeah.
If I've calculated correctly, I think Dreyer and Reinbold will become the 10th team that Daly has competed for across his 108 starts in IndyCar.
It's a lot. Do you know who they are? That's the question.
Do I know who? I have read a number of them
have some
over time. So we've got Maya Shank
last year, yeah.
Ed Carpenter Racing, Coyne, Foyt, Andretti,
Yeah.
Did he drive for Peterson?
He did.
He's
Twice.
driven for Harding, did he?
Yep.
Has he
Got
done
most
something with
of it there.
Ganassi?
No, he did Andretti. He did the Indy 500 temp with Andretti.
Did I say? I'm pretty sure. Did I say Andretti? Did I not say
I don't
Andretti?
think you did. Did Carlin though? Carlin when
Carlin,
they
of
were in
course,
IndyCar.
Carlin,
He did his got his really random pole at Iowa 2020. Still not sure how that works itself out, but there we are. He's a master. How many people can say they got pole and a Carlin? Probably only him.
Exactly, and I've just got some quotes up actually about Wilson here from Don Cusick, he's one of the partners. Cusick Motorsports are back alongside Dreyer Reinbold Racing, and I think Cusick are largely kind of involved with Wilson. And Don Cusick said, as far as Stefan goes, unfortunately he had the injury. I think it's set him back a little. I'm not sure that he's done trying to be part of the Indy 500, which I see as the most interesting part. So he's not going to be with Dreyer Reinbold Racing. Whether that's the case that they see Daly and Hunter-Reay not unjustifiably as the two sort of, their best chance of winning, let's say. It does suggest that we could still see Wilson. That he's seen as the reason why they got into the 500 Cusick Motorsports. So, it's a weird one, I would say, not to see Wilson return in some ways, because it did seem, especially after last year's injury and what have you, he would return just to kind of a case of unfinished business, let's say.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not going to be with the team, and instead it's Daly and with Hunter-Reay, who maybe we should get on to now.
Yeah, I mean, quickly on Wilson, it does feel a tad harsh that he hasn't got a seat, but at the same time, if I'm looking at it from a winning perspective, I'm not here for sympathy. I'm here to win the race. And respectfully to Stefan Wilson, he's a fantastic driver. He's done the Indy 500 many times, but you look at the lineup, you've got ex-Indy 500 winner, and you've got won the Masters at the Speedway, and you've kind of got to balance that out. And I'm sure Stefan Wilson will get another opportunity again. I hope he does, because you sort of said it's a bit of unfinished business, and you don't want your Indy 500 career to end like that. Like we don't want Simon Pagenaud's IndyCar career to end in a massive barrel roll. So that's sort of the way we see it. But yeah, let's get on to Ryan Hunter-Reay, 2014 Indianapolis 500 winner, 2012 IndyCar champion. He's back. He was obviously there last year for the 500. Led a couple of laps in the end, I think. Finished 11th, I believe, and then stepped in with Ed Carpenter Racing, ironically replacing Daly for the end of 2023. But back in the one-time car at the Indy 500, and he's back. He's back. He's seems very confident, and why not?
He seems very confident. I mean, last year their race was actually hindered by a failed front wing adjuster, which failed quite early in the race, supposedly. So he feels that they could have been fighting in the top 5 with the very top teams if it wasn't for that. So that's certainly encouraging going into this year. An interesting stat actually about Dreyer Reinbold Racing. They have qualified each of their 42 drivers for the Indy 500, which obviously included Hunter-Reay and Wilson last year. But yeah, do you know how Dreyer Reinbold Racing came about, actually? We'll just quickly get onto that, because I did not know.
I presume there was a man called someone Dreyer who linked up with Dennis Reinbold, and that's about all my estimations.
And also trivia, when was their first involvement in IndyCar?
God.
I know it's their 20-something Indy 500 this year, so I guess late 90s, 98.
Good shout. 2000. And if I researched correctly, I believe they won on debut at Walt Disney World Speedway in 2000. They never won again after that, but they... Dennis Reinbold, who is the team owner, his grandfather, Floyd Dreyer, was a former factory motorcycle racer who also built successful Indy 500 cars in the 1930s, as well as championship-winning sprint cars, midgets, and quarter midgets. So that's where the sort of origins were. And then they became... they were a full-time IndyCar outfit until they had a break in 2013, and then since 2014 they've been an Indy 500 only entry. So Yeah, I mean, it says a lot that they attract names such as Hunter-Reay. Let's just put it that way. And Hunter-Reay himself is very confident in. Well, I think one interesting thing actually is he spoke in the video conference afterwards about the merits of an Indy-only entry by the fact that they actually just put all of their resources into the car, and that can be beneficial. I think he said, especially with I think it was the lighter parts obviously coming on this year, that could be slightly to their detriment. He said it's double-sided, that there's a bit of a disadvantage of not having the full season rhythm. But actually, for a team that just put all of their resources all year round into the 500, and then there's not an insignificant amount of testing time, practice time before the race, that it can actually be really beneficial. I think Dreyer and Reinbold are the kind of best example, or one of the best examples of why one-off entries are so special for the 500, which we might get onto in a bit actually, with some reports that there might be guaranteed entries, or at least consideration of guaranteed entries. But yeah, Hunter-Reay is super confident that he can really do something quite special this May.
I mean, everyone thinks they could do something special in May, so I'm not going to get too ahead of myself. But it would be a great story, put it that way. I think it'd be a really nice story, sort of this one-off entry wins. And I think from like a external standpoint, people like Dreyer and Reinbold, people like Able Motorsports, they kind of see these entries as field fillers rather than meaningful entry, and that's obviously not the case at all. Everyone goes to Indy with the goal of winning, and it'd be such a great story to see one of these one-off entries from sort of like Castroneves did in 2021. I mean, obviously that was a great story for completely different reasons, but it would be great for the series, I think, if it's always one-off entries wins, because it gives you the impression that anyone can win. And you never know, like it did with Castroneves, could that give the impetus for them to return full time? You never know.
One thing that's interesting to note is that Hunter-Reay, I asked him, in fact, in the press conference about his future and whether there is any sort of consideration of, I don't know what the equivalent is in racing, just hanging up your boots, as they'd say in football over here.
Hanging up
your helmet. Maybe hanging up your helmet. But no, there's no intention from Hunter-Reay to I don't want to say quit, because that sounds like he's stepping away unceremoniously, but there's no intention to retire anytime soon. I think it was straight after last year's 500, in fact, that obviously he went off to a Carpenter Racing, but the intention was always to actually return with Dreyer and Reinbold this year. So that was decided quite early on, and in fact, it's probably an apt time. Maybe we should just play my questions for the two drivers. I asked Daly about his future as well, whether he would be returning full time, and then Hunter-Reay about retirement, which was a very nice answer, incorporating a very nice tribute for Gilles de Ferran as well.
Just a couple more. Archie O'Reilly from DIVEBOMB Motorsports Magazine. Go ahead, Archie.
Cheers, Dave. A couple for the drivers. Conor, I mean, I think you've said on the podcast that you aren't actively pursuing anything for this year full-time in IndyCar, but looking kind of beyond this year into 2025, are you still looking at full-time IndyCar, or are your views elsewhere, maybe NASCAR?
I mean, honestly, it would have to be the right situation for me, and I'm obviously not going to slot into any of the well-coveted seats. Maybe if I win the Indy 500 this year, that's a different conversation. That's obviously the goal. But who knows? I would never. No doors are ever shut. I'd love to convince Dennis to go full-time racing. You know what I mean? But that obviously takes a very, very large investment. And in the end, that's what it takes. That's what it's going to take for me. That's what it's going to take for anyone who wants to go full-time IndyCar racing, essentially. So we'll see. I would never shut any doors. I love the sport of IndyCar, and I do believe I have a lot of unfinished business in that realm.
Thanks, Conor. And for Ryan, how much longer do you plan on doing this for, driving in the Indy 500? Do you have a particular end date in mind, or are you just happy to keep going as it is for now?
No, I don't. It's. I think I talked to Gilles de Ferran about it at one point, and we all miss him dearly. That's for sure. He was a great mentor in many ways. But he told me, he said, you'll know if that fire is not there, you'll know it when it's not there. It's very obvious. And this race, the 500, I think about it before I go to bed. When I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about different things that I need to be on top of for this one race. And that fire is burning as bright as it ever has. So I haven't even thought about any of that. Just going out, putting the best foot forward, and making sure that I'm giving 110% to this team and to the effort that all these folks at the team are putting in as well. So I'm excited and as eager as ever. So I haven't even thought about it.
Thanks, Ryan. Cheers, Dave. Congrats,
Thank you.
guys.
Thanks, Archie.
So kind of linking back to Indy-only entries, having spoken about Dreyer and Reinbold, there has been a report from the Indy Star that there are possibly, or at least considerations from IndyCar ownership, that there could be guaranteed entries for the Indy 500 as part of what's a new membership program, which I think is something to do with some sort of franchise system that's been kind of spoken about a little bit. The piece says, basically that there is the consideration of giving some, or I think possibly all of the full-time entries, at least most of the full-time full season entries, guarantees starting spots at the 500, which is controversial to say the least. I think from me, I'll just go straight out there and say it's a big no. I think Bump Day is one of the greatest things that IndyCar has to offer. It's a very big thing, obviously, in the 500. The jeopardy that comes with it is just great, and that's how it should be in sport, and it's how it should be in this sport. You look back to last year, Graham Rahal getting bumped. That was a major story, and if you all of a sudden, make it so full season entries get into the race regardless, all of a sudden the whole qualifying weekend just becomes quite considerably less exciting. You don't get those stories of minnows defeating season names, which are kind of all part of the spectacle of May that make it, what everyone says is the greatest spectacle in racing, and justifiably so. I think it would feel so wrong for a car to be locked into the race if they were not quick enough. Imagine Jack Harvey and Graham Rahal, who were struggling because their cars were just simply not fast enough, getting locked into the race while your likes of R.C. Enerson or Catherine Legg are forced to fight to get in the field despite being quicker. It takes away the meritocracy, I would say. And ultimately, I think it kind of seems to revolve around money for the full season teams. Obviously, the 500 is the big money-making race, and it can be detrimental for teams if they don't make the field. It can break bonds with sponsors, for instance. And, okay, I do understand the sentiment of allowing full-time teams to automatically make the 500. They are the spine of the series, and they make the series across the year. But at the same time, it's the one-off entries that add so much to the 500, like we've just spoken about with Dreyer and Reinbold. They spend their entire year working towards one race. Some drivers spend an entire year working towards that one race, as is the case now with Hunter-Reay. And I think in his answer with me, he interestingly said that he stays up at night, and kind of when he wakes up at night, he's always thinking about the Indy 500, which is really telling. You've got Stefan Wilson, obviously. He's maybe not going to be in the field this year, but he's another one that just works all year to get into the 500. And it would just feel wrong if those drivers are, it's just made infinitely harder for them to make the field. Obviously, it's already a challenge, but if you're then allowing cars that maybe aren't fast enough to be locked into the race, it just doesn't feel right. It takes away from the spectacle, as I've said so many times, and limits, all of these tales that come away from the month of May that we'll look back on for years to come, as will be the case from last year's bump day, Jack Harvey's last gas bumping of his teammates. And I imagine this will be unanimously voted against by fans, because you want every spot up for grabs, and you need every spot up for grabs. It's what makes the 500 so special. There's my rant over, but there's a lot to say on it, and it's not, it's just not good reading.
Well, I was going to say, part of the Indy 500 is a part of the bump bit. I think that is the reason that people kind of just join in. They don't, it's like I said, they don't want to watch a race or the qualifying when they know where people are going to get in or not. they watch the bump day because anything could happen on that day. You know, one of the top drivers could, not saying it would, but one of the top drivers could suddenly be out. Something could happen, and kind of the possibilities of all of that is what makes fans kind of tune in, and that's what makes everyone more interested in it. I think if it was to like get rid of it in the sense of like confirmed drivers and all this, I think it wouldn't kind of have the hype that kind of it gets, and it wouldn't sit right with the fans. I think it's like you said, it's part of the reason that people watch it is for the bump day, and you need drivers that it's the fair chance that anyone could be out, and it's just that it's everyone needs a fair chance that they could be out. They just need to be fast enough, and if they're not, then it sounds bad, but tough luck on them.
I'm not gonna pretend I know the ins and outs of IndyCar finances or anything to do with sponsorship or from a promoter and team owner sort of view. I'm not going to pretend that I know this bits of information. I'm sure there is benefits to them. Look, if I'm a team owner and I'm getting a guaranteed spot into the great spectacle of racing, is there really an incentive for me to say no? I get more money from it. From a corporate aspect, again, I don't know the ins and outs of it. I'm not going to pretend I do. But I just guess increasing the money around it is my only workings out. But obviously, I don't agree with the concept. You don't get the stories. You don't get the Fernando Alonso's. You don't get the Ryan Hunter-Reay's being knocked out. You don't get the Rahals, and that is a shame. But I think the other aspect is if I'm Dreyer Reinbold, if I'm Able Motorsports, what is my incentive? Because I'm no longer going against 33 cars to qualify for the field. I'm only going against 8. And that already significantly narrows my chances. You know, RLL just had a terrible month. And for someone like Able or Dreyer and Reinbold, beating them was a much more achievable target. But if I've got 2 cars and, you know, there's 2 cars being bumped out of 10, my chances already quickly diminish. So if you're adding an extra entry or a one-off entry, what is the incentive? You're not getting that piece of the pie anymore, and you also have an increased chance of getting bumped from the field, which, yes, it works great for the full-timers, but for the people who can't afford to set something up full-time, how does it work for them?
Yeah, and you're totally right, because I think one of the big things about the month of May is the fact that your Ables or your Dreyer and Reinbolds can go up against the Penske's and go toe-to-toe with the Ganassis and potentially upset them if there was some, you know, like weird circumstance, let's put it that way. But yeah, I think this just takes away from the competitive aspect that makes it so special. And I've not got much more to say on it because I think I've kind of exhausted every point I had in that monologue. But yeah, it's just not something I would like to see, as much as I can understand why team owners would push for it. Of course I can. The finances are really important for them. But from a fan aspect and entertainment point of view, it wouldn't feel right.
Let's stay on Indy 500 because there's been a small bit of news. I don't know if it's been officially confirmed or not, but it's sort of looked like it. 2 new rules coming in. The Dragon is not going to be a thing as of this year. I think it's 1 move you're going to be allowed down the main straight and no crossing the pit attenuator. Good calls on both. I don't really think there's too much to argue against those rules. They've both been demanded for and need to be brought in for safety, let's be honest.
Yeah, I think it was kind of an inevitability, really. Even, you know, Marcus Ericsson unleashed the Dragon, as they said, when he won the 500. And even yeah, I know he was on the receiving end of it when Joseph Newgarden won in 23, but Ericsson, of course, did it to win the 500, and he has spoken about, you know, how it needs to be changed. And I think it's been pretty unanimous from the drivers that this is dangerous. It's not begrudging Newgarden for doing it. It's not begrudging Ericsson for doing it the year prior. But yeah, it's dangerous, and they could do it because it was part of the rules, and you're going to do anything you can to gain that advantage and to win the greatest spectacle in racing and win the big prize. But yeah, for a safety aspect, if you crash into the attenuator, it's not going to be good. And yeah, the same thing with, you know, only being able to move once. It makes perfect sense because you're going to have a big accident when you're going at 200 plus, 220 plus miles per hour.
Yeah, It's been a long time coming, but there's growing fears of an accident. You don't want to cut someone off on the main straight at Indy, and even worse, you don't want to crash into an attenuator. I mean, there's been some pretty big crashes involving it a few years in recent years. Thankfully, it's where people have hit the wall on the exit of turn 4 and then hit it. But even that's bad enough. What would an accident be like if someone swerved across and hit it on their way back onto the track? That would be a really bad accident. So good job, Indianapolis. And I'm not going to say it's fairer racing. Well, I guess it is, but I think it improves the racing spectacle a bit more. I think Newgarden and Ericsson did it, as you said, because it was in the rules. I don't think they liked doing it, but you're going to do it to get the best possible result. So I think it was a good call. Well, it is a good call. And as I said, just might improve the spectacle a little bit more because, on the last lap on the run to the line, who's to say if Newgarden can only move once, Ericsson doesn't get him on the line. So hopefully it's going to only add to it next year or this year.
Right. Should we stick on the Indy 500 theme loosely? I mean, it's 111 days until Indy, 110 days to Indy tomorrow, and 100 days to Indy is coming back. It's been announced today. Yeah, it was pretty smooth. I'm quite impressed. The first season, let's just cover that first, actually. The first season appears to be coming to Paramount Plus, which is something. I think that's is it available globally? I don't really know much about it.
Hopefully.
I would imagine it is because the CW is US. Yeah, the CW is US only. So I imagine they will be moving that first season to Paramount Plus, so it's more widely available. But the second season, which is coming, is still going to be on the CW, unfortunately. US exclusive, which I'm not too pleased with. It needs to be distributed worldwide somehow. I don't know whether, it's obviously hard to strike a deal, but for maximum impacts, you really need to be sharing it on a wider scale. I did manage to watch the first series. It was very well made, but, that considered, they need to be getting it somewhere where the whole world can see it. I'm glad it's back for a second season, but the CW, had a limited impact last year. I don't think we really saw any growth, to be honest, coming from 100 Days to Indy, simply because it was such a limited audience. The reach is far too limited, and they have to try somehow to strike a deal with a streaming partner that can distribute it further. F1 have got Netflix with Drive to Survive. NASCAR have now got their own Netflix series as well. How can IndyCar do something? Can they strike a deal with Amazon Prime, for instance, which is something that, a lot of people have. It's quite affordable. Otherwise, you're just limiting the growth from the series, and it kind of negates the point of it. Even though it is a good watch, I think it negates kind of the actual impacts and its intended impacts, I would say.
I can't say I've watched it, so I don't really know sort of the storylines and the behind the scenes footage in that regard. But we don't really know the numbers from America last year. I think there were intentions of it going globally, but we sort of need to find out the numbers. I guess it would have helped in America to some degree, but I don't think it, at least from what I saw, IndyCar didn't really promote it loads. From what I've heard, the NASCAR series is quite good and it's doing quite well off the bat. And I think this sort of thing is good for getting new fans into sport, just because you sort of have these behind the scenes. You get to see the personal life of Joseph Newgarden or your Alex Pelleas or your Pato O'Ward, and there you can pick a favourite. Oh, I quite like this Will Power and his outbursts, and then you can translate that into watching it, and you're a Will Power fan watching IndyCar, and I think that's the aspect they need to hit. But in a localer basis, it's a bit harder. Again, it's expensive to do it internationally. Dare I say it, the fan base isn't really there internationally. I feel like whilst F1 and NASCAR, you already had a good existing fan base to sort of spread the initial hype. IndyCar may not have that, which is maybe one of my concerns if they do it. So
yeah, so Paramount Plus is available not worldwide, but in Australia, Latin America, Europe. So that is the sort of thing. I'm not sure why the second series isn't going straight on there. I guess again, it's all the money thing. Probably you would imagine, like with all of these things, but it's a shame that it's not going straight on there. Because it needs that global, just sort of needs to tap into a global audience. Because as I said, otherwise you're just going to kind of, the intended impact is not going to be had, because you're essentially just showing it to the existing audience, which great, it's entertainment for them, but you're not showing it to anyone new, which is how it kind of should be.
Yeah, I know it's not as easy as saying, like, but I know when we're like, oh, we can just stream it. It's not as easy as like we kind of know that and like the finance, but it's like I said, the intended use of it is to spread like awareness of IndyCar and to kind of get IndyCar known. And if it is only in one area, that's just not. It's like I said, it's not the impact that it's going to have, and as well, it's the marketing and how they kind of market it as well. I think if they kind of had a big push on that, I think it would have made it better. But then anywhere outside of the intended areas, they won't kind of watch it. Maybe they'll see clips of it somewhere, but they won't watch it. They may not like get into it. And if they do find somewhere to watch it, it will be weeks after it's like already out, and then they may lose interest in it. And it's for it to have like the impact and for it to be the purpose that it is, it needs to kind of go out internationally. It needs to go out to everyone and just market that as well and make sure that it's marketed well.
Yeah, I mean, I quite like the way they do it in the US. I think it was released in the 6 weeks building up to the 500. It covers the however many races before the 500. We have 5 or 6 before the 500. So I think it's intended to be the exact same again, which I guess that's good. It builds up hype for the Indy 500. But at the same time, it would be nice if, I don't know, whether they release a second part that covers the rest of the season, which kind of brings awareness to the rest of the series rather than just the thing that is kind of most known already. Because when I watched it, it was really well made. I really enjoyed it. It gave loads of insight, loads of behind the scenes stuff. And I'm not saying they film every race, but if they release their episodes in the build up to the 500, and then it would be nice to then see a bit from the second half of the season as well, just to kind of keep people engaged rather than having to wait then until the following year, and then you kind of don't know what's happened to the rest of the season after these storylines have been built up. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how to do it, and it's not as easy as just saying it, but I feel like maybe there's a better way they could do it. But I'm glad it's back. I think just predominantly they just need to find a global streaming partner.
I think it ending Indy also isn't a good thing in many ways, because it doesn't help this reputation IndyCar has of only being the Indy 500. And that's something they need to shake off. And don't get me wrong, they're trying to do it. But there are a lot of fans who think IndyCar is the Indy 500 and that's it. And obviously Indy is the selling point. But if you're doing a series which is building up to Indy and then just ends, that's not going to really help that impression that a lot of people have. So I think it would be nice to have a bit after the 500. Yes, I get it. But you could have something like a chase for the championship at the end, That's something that American audiences would absolutely love. So that's something, I guess, again, it's all longer term. You've got to look at this. But I think it's important for the series to adjust the way they do it in that regard.
There's probably one more thing I would mention for this week is there was an article from Racer about the hybrid test at Homestead. So the teams obviously had the, kind of full field test at Homestead in the week prior to the Daytona 24 hours, where each team brought one car. They had 3 days of running. And by all accounts, there has now been a very successful hybrid test in the wake of the Daytona 24 hours, where obviously a lot of the IndyCar drivers were. It was the big four teams again. I think there were 10 drivers. They ran, according to Racer, combined 1,446 laps, which is good stuff. Alexander Rossi on off track said no issues, all very smooth, and Racer kind of reaffirmed that point. Marshall Pruitt's piece said there were no mechanical stoppages, which was apparently quite a contrast to the last hybrid running in November, when one driver was reportedly towed 6 times within a single day after their car broke down. So to have no issues across these 3 days is really encouraging after a bit of a hiatus from hybrid testing. And I think this is also the first time there's been, I think, some sort of latest iteration of the ERS system, and the first time the hybrid has also been run with the lighter components as well, because the hybrid test cars last year still had, I think, 2023 spec. Now the cars are into 2024 spec. That's what the racer piece says anyway. And another thing that's quite encouraging that I picked out from the piece is that one driver apparently slid off track. I think their nose went into the tyres. Nothing major. But obviously, as it is at the moment, a driver would stall, and then the AMR safety crew have to bring on a truck, have to reboot them. But drivers can now apparently reboot themselves, which is quite a big addition with the hybrid engine. Yeah, absolutely, finally.
Because you had it a few years ago where a driver would have a silly little spin, but then we'd have to have a caution to get them re-going, and it was just a bit of, not a waste of time, but
yeah, it counts for so many of the cautions that we have. It's quite a big thing, and apparently the speeds were really encouraging. So Marshall Pruitt said that Kirkwood actually topped his topping time from the non-hybrid test. He was actually faster with the hybrid components. I think, again, like we said, did we cover it last week? I think the non-hybrid test at Homestead, it's not a track that's on the schedule, it's testing. You can't really read into that much. Conditions can obviously play a factor as well, but I think the thoughts were that it would be quite a bit slower with the hybrid system added, but by all means, that might not be so much the case. Kirkwood told Racer that it was quite nimble, which was, again, a contrast to the hybrid system being put into the old spec car. So, yeah, I think it's all good signs, really. And I'm still not massively looking forward to the mid-season introduction. I feel like it could be problematic, but I'm certainly feeling, optimistic off the back of reading that from Marshall Pruitt. In terms of that, when the hybrid actually is introduced.
Encouraging stuff. So hopefully that will resolve many of the cautions. Small little other bits of news from the week. Kyle Larson is testing tomorrow at Phoenix as his preparations for the Indy 500 carry on. I always seem to forget Larson's doing it, and every time I think about it, I'm like, it's a story and a half. It's already been in the works for over a year now. It's pretty unbelievable to think. But yeah, it gets closer. May gets closer, and it's just like extra little tingle this year. It's very exciting, and I don't know what to think of Larson. I'm still like, how will he do? How will he smash it out the park? And well, would it be a good look or a bad look for IndyCar if Larson smashes it out the field?
That's quite a loaded question, to be fair. I mean, yeah, as you say, it's been in the works for a while, so I think that's why we've it doesn't feel like a fresh story anymore. However, I think we'll cover this when it gets to our preview and prediction episodes, that this is really one of the stories of the year, because as you say, like, you don't really know how he's going to do. Is it a good look? Is it a bad look? I mean, maybe it's a great look on McLaren for bringing a great package again, but I think Larson is obviously already quite a well-rounded driver. I think he does a lot of midget racing as well as his NASCAR stuff. So I don't think it would be as bad a look on IndyCar as, like, say, a NASCAR driver who has absolutely no experience of doing anything else comes in. I don't think it'd be a great look if he all of a sudden goes and beats prodigious talent Pato O'Ward and is the fastest McLaren. But I doubt that would happen. I mean, I'd be shocked and, yeah, very surprised if that did happen. But, yeah, I don't actually know. It's really hard to say. I think it wouldn't be a great look, but yeah, it is a difficult one.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you think? Yeah, what do you think about that?
Again, it's hard to say. That's why I asked you. But
cheers.
From a fan perspective, I think it would be good, because if Larson was 30th, would the NASCAR fans switch off? Quite possibly. But if he's top 5, they'd probably carry on watching. If he's competitive for the whole month of May, that's going to bring in an audience. But if he's not competitive, that's going to be a bit of a concern. So in some regards, we do need Larson to be competitive. But if this NASCAR driver shows up, schools the field, especially if he schools Rossi in the same car, next Indy 500 winner, Pato O'Ward, one of the strongest people at Indy, I fear that's not going to look very good on the... Obviously, we know that our driver's fantastically talented, but a casual NASCAR fan is not going to know that. And if he rocks up and starts beating ex-Indy 500 winners in the same team, I don't think that's going to help things. So it's just so hard to say. I think we need him to do well from a series perspective, but not too well, because I think it could devalue the reputation of the series if he comes in and starts winning, like not quite to the same extent, but almost like it did when Grosjean came in and started winning, and everyone's like, "Oh, this IndyCar thing's pretty easy." Obviously, we know it isn't, but yeah, we just have to be careful with it, because I think Larson's addition is absolutely beneficial. It's huge for the sport, but if he goes out there and absolutely smashes the ballpark, yeah, I think the series' reputation might be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I think especially because NASCAR fans they're pretty vocal, and they make up for... Well, they're probably the most outspoken American motorsport fans, you would say. So, yeah, I mean, do they already look a bit negatively on IndyCar? Some of them, maybe. I do agree there, to be fair. I think all of your points are valid, that Larson needs to be doing well because he needs to keep the attention and all of these NASCAR fans, because there are a lot of them. They get some pretty impressive TV ratings. A lot of their races are pretty much in the ballpark of what the 500 gets. So that's a lot more viewers. And even if a very minor percentage of them think, "Oh, this is exciting," and become IndyCar fans, great. But yeah, if Larson maybe crashes out after 30 laps, or even worse, doesn't make the field, then not great.
Yeah, so it's a tough balance where we probably don't want him leading every lap, but we don't want him lounging around in 16th. So, look, he's with our McLaren. I doubt that's going to happen. He's going to have a lot of training. Starts tomorrow at Phoenix. Well, today on the day of release, and then he'll have the open test, and by then, hopefully, he'll be up to speed. So, big story to follow. I think we said that's going to be the story of the year. And I'm looking forward, just with a bit of trepidation. It's been a very 500 oriented episode, this one, isn't it? We haven't really delved outside of it.
Yeah, I don't think that was even the intention. It's just kind of a lot of the news has just revolved around it. Exciting.
Yeah, it's what, 3.5 months to go. Yeah, I've been watching recent Indy 500s actually, and you just miss it. You just miss it. I think the feeling of seeing 3 cars by 11 forming up with the 250,000 capacity crowd and exiting turn 4 is just such a magical moment. I can't really describe it, but I think from a sporting year, there's not many things which can rival it.
Oh, for sure. I can't wait. I love watching the highlights as well. I've watched Jack Harvey, Graham Rahal, Bump Day quite a lot of times, and the last lap. Newgarden.
I think I've watched Helio's 4th win about 16 times in the last week. But the thing about Indy 500 is however many times you watch it, the specialness, the uniqueness just doesn't detract from it. Every time it's just as incredible to watch. And we need the season to start first. And again, I need to have my St. Petersburg hat on, saying it's only a month away. But you start at this point, when Dreyer and Reinbold start announcing, when Marco Andretti's ticked off, you start thinking about it. And how can you not? How can you not?
Exactly.
We're almost there. I mean, and I think that'll probably round us off. Dale Coyne Racing, you've got 4 weeks. No, yeah, it's 4 weeks now. So take your time. Hope you never know. I reckon I'm going to say this time next week we'll know. I don't know if anyone else is going to agree.
No, that's really bold. I think we'll know by St. Pete. maybe.
I hope so.
Maybe.
Maybe I'm driving. Maybe I'm driving. Who knows? I might be on the shortlist. I'm gonna go bold this time next week. We'll know at least one.
Interesting. Who will it be?
Oh, that was asked for. Devlin Di Francesco. I mean, you still don't know. I mean, I guess you've kind of got Di Francesco, Harvey, and Peterson as the front runners. You just don't. You just don't know.
You really don't.
You really don't. It could be anyone. So anyway, that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. For those of you on Spotify, bit of an Indy 500 already to this one, but some big news coming out this week, and hopefully, as I predicted, there'll be some next week. So, as I said, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.